Let's rewind to 1798, when the government gave itself the power to detain foreign nationals in times of war. It's called the Alien Enemies Act. Sounds like ancient history, right? Wrong. This law was built for wartime crises, actual invasions, global conflict, enemies at the gate. Think World War II. But here's the kicker. It's still active, still usable. And in the wrong hands, it's a loaded weapon aimed at civil liberties, just waiting for a trigger. 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞, former federal prosecutor, discusses in first of its kind ruling. Trump-appointed Texas judge says Trump's use of the Alien Enemies Act is unlawful.
The invasion, what the administration did here, or predatory invasion standards in the law. Why?
Right, Brianna. So this is a rebuke to the Trump administration delivered by a Trump-appointed federal judge. Now, there's a couple important rulings that the judge makes here. First of all, he rejects the administration's argument that applying the Alien Enemies Act is solely up to the president and the courts can have nothing to do with it. This judge says, no, it's our role as courts to review this and to make sure that it's done within the basis of the law. Then the judge concludes you've gone beyond the law because this law is only intended to apply, first of all, if there's a war, which there's obviously not, and second of all, if there's been an invasion or a predatory incursion. And the judge then goes through those phrases. He looks back at history, he pulls out the dictionary, he looks at prior cases, and he concludes that the presence of this gang, Tren de Aragua, does not meet the definition of an invasion or a predatory incursion. Therefore, the Trump administration has exceeded the law, and therefore this Alien Enemies Act cannot be used for these deportations, according to this judge.
So this is limited, though, to his Texas district. Explain that.
Yeah, so the actual plaintiffs here are three individuals, three deportees who managed to actually halt the process before they were deported. They're currently being held in Texas. There are other people, there are dozens or hundreds of other people who've already been deported under this Alien Enemies Act. People may be wondering, well, what happens to them? The answer really is they're in an uncertain state. First of all, they can try to challenge this law under the same basis, but it is legally harder and logistically harder to do that if you're on foreign soil. And the other thing is, and this applies to all the defendants here, this judge makes a point of saying, even though I conclude the Alien Enemies Act does not apply here, they still can be deported under normal processes, normal immigration law, if they are here illegally. They just can't be deported under this ancient 1798 Alien Enemies Act.
Yeah, maybe not as quickly and without the due process that they would normally have, right?
What exactly happened here? Fast forward to March 2025, when the centuries-old statute was invoked by President Trump to deport Venezuelans accused of being members of a gang called Tren de Aragua. But and here comes the twist. Judge Fernando Rodriguez Jr., a federal judge from Texas, and mind you, appointed by Donald Trump, ruled that this use of the law was entirely unlawful. His argument? The Alien Enemies Act doesn't apply here because there's no organized armed threat or invasion. In his decision, Rodriguez made it clear that the law is meant for scenarios like, I don't know, an 18th century wartime context, not modern-day peacetime deportations. Now, let me break this down further, because it's a big deal. Rodriguez specifically stated that the administration couldn't just declare an invasion or enemy combatants without significant evidence. He argued this interpretation would essentially hand unlimited authority to the executive branch. So, was this misuse of power? It sure seems so, doesn't it? And here's another layer. Advocacy groups like the ACLU have drawn unsettling parallels to historical abuses. Think about the Red Scare, when countless individuals were targeted based solely on suspicion and fear. The way this law was used against Venezuelans, people who may not even have criminal records, is strikingly similar in its disregard for due process and human rights. It's actually chilling to think how dangerous this precedent could have been if it had gone unchallenged. We're seeing the court step in to reaffirm that balance of power, reminding everyone that constitutional checks are critical, and that's something we can't ever take for granted. All right, so let's talk about the heart of this controversy, the Trump administration's classification of Tren de Aragua. This gang was labeled as a foreign terrorist organization. A pretty bold move. Why? Well, this classification was the justification for invoking the Alien Enemies Act. But here's where things, really unravel. Judge Fernando Rodriguez Jr., in his 36-page ruling, picked apart this narrative. His main argument? There's no evidence, none, that Tren de Aragua's activities qualify as an organized armed invasion of the U.S. It's a stretch, and honestly, it sounds more like a political maneuver than a legal one. Rodriguez made a key point about the limits of executive power. He explained that allowing a president to define what constitutes an invasion could essentially erase any boundaries on executive authority. Think about it. What's stopping one leader from declaring, I don't know, any group they dislike as an invading force? It's a slippery slope, and thankfully, the court saw right through it. Now, Rodriguez isn't the only judge pushing back. Let's shift to Vermont, where Judge Jeffrey W. Crawford made waves by emphasizing constitutional protections. He ruled in favor of an individual detained under dubious claims, highlighting the First and Fifth Amendments, free speech and due process. So essentially, he reaffirmed that these principles apply to every single person, regardless of citizenship. That's critical in challenging policies that, seem to sidestep those rights completely. And of course, we can't leave out the Supreme Court. They've been busy handing down rulings that reinforce this thing called due process. Recently, the court mandated that detainees targeted under the Alien Enemies Act be given adequate notice so they could challenge their detentions legally. This is huge. The court is saying clearly that no one, not the government, not even a president, can shortcut the law. It sets a precedent that's going to shape immigration policies for years to come. It's fascinating to watch the judicial branch stepping up as this fail-safe against, let's be real, flawed decision-making. These rulings collectively send a sharp reminder that the Constitution isn't just symbolic. It's practical, it's enforceable, and most importantly, it's there to check power. So here's the thing. When we're talking about deportations under the Alien Enemies Act, we're not just debating politics, right? We're diving deep into human consequences, actual lives, families, and futures. And for those Venezuelans deported to prisons in El Salvador, the reality is horrifying. Reports, credible ones, detail conditions that, they're inhumane. We're talking about indefinite detention, no due process, and even allegations of torture. These aren't just bureaucratic missteps. They're massive humanitarian red flags. Human Rights Watch, an organization laser-focused on advocating for global justice, has been loud and clear about this. They've called out the act as incompatible with modern-day legal and human rights standards, and they're right. The law dates back to 1798, predating human rights frameworks and international treaties, frameworks designed explicitly to prevent exactly the kind of abuses we're seeing unfold in these cases. Now, just for a second, imagine being flagged for things like tattoos. Tattoos, of all things. These arbitrary markers have reportedly been used as supposed evidence of gang affiliation. But dig a little deeper, and you find stories like the man with autism awareness tattoos, or another whose ink honored his parents. It's absurd, and it points to a kind of profiling that just can't be part of any legitimate justice system. And let's tie this back to history because, history has a knack for repeating itself. Look at the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II or the Red Scare targeting so-called political dissidents. What do these moments teach us? They teach us that acting out of fear or using vague, unchecked powers almost always leads to injustice. Transparency, advocacy, those have to be our guiding principles if we're serious about preserving democracy. And the real question is, how did we even get here? How does a wartime law designed for full-scale invasions get twisted into a tool for deporting individuals who don't even pose a credible threat? It's a stark reminder that legal frameworks need constant scrutiny, constant, to ensure they're not used as weapons. And that's where we'll wrap things up for today's episode of The Real 411. Honestly, this has been such a layered, complex topic, and I hope it sparks some deeper thought about how laws, especially old ones like the Alien Enemies Act, are being interpreted and applied in today's world. It's a stark reminder that vigilance, advocacy, and staying informed aren't optional, but necessary if we value democracy and human rights. I want to take a moment to thank all of you for tuning in. Really, it means so much to know there's a community out there engaging with these issues, digging into the tough questions and pushing for truth. If today's discussion resonated, do me a favor, hit that follow button, share this podcast with your friends, and hey, drop a comment letting me know your thoughts or what you'd love to hear about next. And don't forget, we're here because we believe in independent media, in stories that go beyond the headline. So, if you'd like to support us further, check out The Real 411 on Substack or Spotify. Every listen, every subscription, it all helps keep this platform alive and thriving. So, until next time, stay informed and stay bold. Remember, the story is never just the headline, and it's up to all of us to keep digging for the truth. Take care and stay real, everyone.